Thank you. Miss Alice Randall is a New York Times best-selling novelist, award-winning songwriter, award-winning cookbook author, popular essayist, and professor. She has a primary appointment in African American and Diaspora Studies at Vanderbilt University. She graduated from Harvard University in English and American Literature in 1981 and received an honorary doctorate from Fisk University in 2012. She also worked alongside Mr. Joya regularly, and you might remember her daughter taught here a few years ago, Miss Williams. So please join me in welcoming Miss Randall.
Thank you. Let me begin with more thanks. I thank Emmanuel, and I particularly thank Mr. Joya for so many years of collaboration and for a kind and generous invitation to speak with you this morning to kick off Black History Month. President Ford initiated public celebrations of Black History Month in 1975. His first address was called A Message. And since 1996, the last quarter of a century, all presidents, Republicans and Democrats, have issued a presidential proclamation acknowledging the importance of Black History Month and a yearly national honoring and celebration of Black History Month. So I thank Carter G. Woodson for inventing Black History Month and giving us that rare thing that's even more precious this year, something that all presidents and both primary parties have agreed on, Black History Month. Today we're going to talk about Black Bottom. That's a map of Black Bottom behind me, a neighborhood in Detroit. My novel is narrated by Ziggy Johnson, who you see over my other shoulder. And I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't know, that in the mid-20th century, Detroit's Black Bottom, a neighborhood you probably never heard of, but that your Duke Ellington, who you've heard from this morning, loved and knew so well. Black Bottom was a vibrant Black neighborhood that rivaled New York's Harlem and Chicago's Bronzeville in terms of importance to Black arts, Black labor movements, Black politics, Black fashion, Black sports. Some years, some ways, the impact of Black Bottom on African American life eclipsed the influence of Bronzeville and even Harlem. The first Black poet laureate of the United States, Robert Hayden, rose from Black Bottom. Boxer Joe Louis, sports' first international Black sports superstar, rose from Black Bottom. Charlotte Ruth Ellis, a pioneering GLTBQ activist, and Lloyd George Richards, who would become dean of the Yale School of Drama, who would produce and direct the August Wilson plays that many of you will read at MBA, rose from Black Bottom, starting as a shoeshine boy whose mother was a maid. The emotional epicenter of Black Bottom was a stately Italian Renaissance-style building that was called the Gotham Hotel. I wish I could take you there in reality. I can only take you there in fiction. The Gotham Hotel was knocked to the ground in a 1950s, late 1950s, early 60s movement that was called urban renewal, but with largely Negro removal that decimated many Black neighborhoods, including our own North Nashville. The building behind me is the Penobscot building, a different landmark that still exists that looks a lot like the Gotham. Langston Hughes, who I know you've all read, called the Gotham the best Negro hotel in the world. Ziggy, the hero of my novel, lived for a long period in the Gotham, and all the Black Bottom saints passed through the lobby of the Gotham, and more bold-faced names such as Thurgood Marshall and Billie Holiday. The legacy of Black Bottom for you all at MBA, for young people today, has a public and a private aspect. The public side of the legacy of Black Bottom is that in creating art, like you created this morning with that amazing rendition of classic jazz, that in creating art and consuming art, telling and reclaiming our stories, can be an act of restorative justice. The Gotham Hotel was razed to the ground in 1963. In 2020, in the pages of Black Bottom Saints, the Gotham rises again, and with it, I hope, Black Bottom in all its splendor. The private side of the legacy of Black Bottom is that we, individuals and communities, can rise from extreme loss. Black Bottom insists that crimes perpetrated on you don't get to define you. You define you. You define you. The pandemic doesn't define you. Racism doesn't define you. You define you. Today, I want to welcome the students of MBA to be honorary citizens of Black Bottom. And as honorary citizens of Black Bottom, I invite you to embrace your chin-up swagger and to understand that in Black Bottom, swagger means respect for self and respect for community. It means doing what you're already doing, going into the city and cooking meals for folks who have too much month at the end of the money. It means respect for working hard and respect for playing hard. It means recognizing the importance of joy, but particularly the joy we find in art, nature, and family. That's what Black Bottom knew. This year, the national theme of Black History Month is family. And so I leave you today to think about the Gordy family who founded Motown Records, working together, self-financing. Anna Diggs is one of the Black Bottom Saints. Anna Gordy is one of the Black Bottom Saints. I want you to also think about the Diggs family that started a mortuary business, a funeral home, that supported a young Congressman Diggs who would help found the Black Caucus and get justice for Emmett Till. There are 61 Black Bottom Saints, and the novel is written in the form of a Catholic Saints Day book. Those of you who know Spoon River Anthology or Profiles in Courage or Our Catholic will find the form familiar. And all of you will find this familiar. It is a series of profiles, much like the profiles seniors write at MBA as part of their preparing to launch into the world. But volunteering at MBA helped give me the structure of this book novel as I encountered all the amazing profiles graduating seniors wrote, and their stories of virtue informed the story I wanted to tell of Black Bottom. There are 61 saints in the book. The saints of summer remind us to look back to move forward, that history has insights and strategies useful in the present. The saints of fall remind us that structural racism eclipses individual excellence, valor, and swagger. If, like Tanya Blanding, who you will hear about on the last the age of 4, weighing 40 pounds, you don't get to move from trauma to transcendence. I have just received a notice that my internet was unstable then, so I'm going to repeat that. If, like Tanya Blanding, you are shot dead in your home at 4 years old, you don't get to move from trauma to transcendence. The saints of winter are geniuses of resilience. They are one-person grit academies. When you're up against it and determined to fight, call on a saint of winter. If there's a way to dismantle some part of the structural racism plaguing a person for a moment or a half inch or plaguing a community, the saints of winter know how to do it. My favorite saints, the saints of spring, know joy is radical. They move from survive to thrive, and they take a lot of folks with them. I am proud that MBA has chosen to make Black Bottom Saints the focus of your Black History Month celebrations. So proud. I would like to say that the University of Virginia and Harvard have also collaborated with me, and they are in good company because of you, the students of MBA. You are the great company, and I'm more excited about this month-long collaboration with you all than I am about anything else because you are the future. Over the course of the month, you will be introduced to 4 saints by your peers. Sammy Davis, Ted Rhodes, Night Train Lane, and Tanya Blanding. I hope they inspire you to seek out untold stories that convey history that is useful in the present to propel us all towards a better future. If you are a golfer or if your family belongs to Belmead Country Club or you've ever visited Belmead, I encourage you to read the Teddy Rhodes story and find out that he's already a part of your story. Most of you have amazing mothers. If you want to appreciate your amazing mother, or if you're one of the people who didn't get that stroke of good fortune, Night Train Lane will have something to teach you. Want a saint to remind you, like Gatsby, to suspend judgment of others? Take a hard look at Nat King Cole. Thinking about going into the military like so many great MBA alums, consider the lives of Saint Sammy Davis and Mark Stepp. If Black Lives Matter and Say Her Name movements make no sense to you, read the Tanya Blanding chapter of Black Bottom Saints and see if you get some understanding of the history of pain and death from which these movements rose. Whether or not you agree with them, you can come to a better understanding of them. Saints are people, virtuous people, who remind us that we are put on this earth to help each other. And that when we help each other, when our community is vibrant, we can rise from the ashes of COVID, rise from the ashes of partisan strife. Yes, ultimately, the biggest theme of Black Bottom Saints is we can rise from the ashes. That's a motto of the city of Detroit, and it's the epigraph of my novel. Working together, we can move to dismantle the structures, interior and exterior, that prevent some of us from moving from trauma to transcendence. Structures that erase the history that might inspire us. Why don't you already know about Black Bottom? Isn't it wonderful? I hope you will find that Mr. Joya and the amazing faculty and staff at MBA are bringing the story to you now in alliance with me. It is wonderful to me, and I am greatly appreciated and appreciative. I invite each of you to read Black Bottom Saints and discover the saint you need, the saint you are most like, or simply the saint whose life brings you joy. And I invite you to engage with the history of racism and structural bias that provided context for the Black Lives Matter and Say Her Name movement. In the words of William Faulkner, the past is never dead. It's not even past. And I, Alice Randall, daughter of Black Bottom, say, the past is living and teaching us. I leave you with an African word, Sankofa. Let's move back to move forward. Let the Black Bottom Saints come marching into your life this Black History Month. Carried high by Eman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. Hopefully everyone appreciated that. I've been looking forward to her coming today to speak to you all and exceed my expectations. As Mr. Joy, Ms. Randall said, for these next few assemblies, we will be presenting on a Black Bottom Saint per assembly, and I'll just be starting us off talking about Sammy Davis Junior. Some of you might recognize his name as he's largely considered as one of the greatest entertainers of all time, earning the nickname Mr. Show Business. Next slide, please. Born in Harlem in 1925, he spent a lot of his time with his father, Sammy Davis Senior, and his uncle, Will Maston. They took him on tours of all sorts of performances, getting him early exposure to the spotlight. At the age of 7 years old, he had his first on-screen performance, Rufus Jones for President, which is pictured on the slide. Becoming a very talented singer, comedian, instrumentalist, and dancer, the future is bright for Sammy. But his career is interrupted by being drafted into World War II, which I'll talk about later. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, he achieved great success in entertainment. He released 40 albums, performed in 7 Broadway shows, acted in 23 films, had countless concert performances. Mentioned in the novel Black Bottom Saints, he had a lead role in the musical Golden Boy, which received numerous Tony nominations and is regarded as one of Sammy's iconic roles. A more familiar movie to you all may be Ocean's 11, pictured above. He starred in the original Ocean's 11 that the more recent reboot trilogy is based off of. On the poster, you can see that he stars next to his best friend, Frank Sinatra, and both of them were in the famous group called the Rat Pack. And as Sammy rose even higher to fame, he continued to be engaged in the civil rights movement in the 1960s by marching and not performing at segregated venues. Next slide, please. Sammy Davis Junior's climb to fame did not come without racial tension. Pointed out by Miss Randall, as she said, and speaking to y'all, and by her novel, he faced horrific racial bias when he was drafted into the Army. He was routinely called the N-word and ostracized from other white troops. In his autobiography, Yes, I Can, he mentions countless instances, including being urinated on, and even his family watch that he took with him everywhere. The soldiers took it from him, stomped on it, and broke it right in his face. Even when fighting for his country, Sammy was not treated with the respect that he deserved. He still remained strong in the face of racism, and the writing of his autobiography shows that he was not afraid to share experiences. One of the reasons he's included in this novel, particularly the winter section, as Ms. Randall mentioned, is because he's a genius of resilience. Everything he did, people disliked. He converted to Judaism later in his life, and that was really, there's anti-Semitism that arose from that. And then also being a black man at the top of entertainment, a lot of people didn't want to see him succeed. And as I said earlier, with him being in the Army, he was in the 1st Integrated Infantry, and he did not have any comradeship while he was there. But he still rose from the ashes. And in Black Bottom Saints, Ms. Randall did a really good job of encompassing his rising from the ashes in this quote. Sammy rises highest when the moons of winter shine into sheltering dark, spotlighting our sacred capacity to make something out of nothing at all. So I hope you all learned something about Sammy Davis Jr. and can resonate with his story, and you will hear more stories in the next few assemblies. Thank you.